700-year anniversary. Cathar Love 166. Yes, this August, this month, it's 700 years since Guillaume Belibaste was burnt at the chateau at Tsunami in the south of France. But what he's remembered for is his famous prophecy that after 700 years the laurel will again grow green. After 700 years the children of the light will return. So 700 years has arrived. What's changed? And why 700 years? He just didn't pick that out of the air. No, he was spot on. This is the age of information, and some would say disinformation. This is the age when the likes of myself or yourself, through the medium of audio, video, podcast, YouTube, whatever, can put forward their point of view, or whatever it is that they're interested in putting forward, to the entire world. Now that doesn't mean to say the entire world is going to tune in and listen to what you say, but those who are interested will eventually, as they catch on to where you are. So the Cathars knew they were going to be wiped out. They knew they were going to be burnt. And this is why that on each occasion when there was burnings of individuals or mass burnings, up to 400 at Laurel, there was 248 at Montsegur, 134 at Minerve, and so on. But the one thing they had in common was that the Cathars didn't scream out in pain. They didn't make a sound. They were burnt, and it was a bit of an anticlimax to the Crusaders and the churchmen that were there, the monks and so forth, not to have these people scream, but they knew they weren't, because it got round that the Cathars didn't scream. And the thing was that they'd, through meditation and through their own system, they learnt to focus away from the flames and just to concentrate on what they were doing. And they knew within a few minutes they'd be consumed by the flames anyway. And also, they went onto the flames voluntarily. So they knew that they would return. They knew it would be in 700 years. And all over the world, I mean, the number of emails I've had and comments I've had from people who have past memories of being a Cathar. So many. Well, when I say so many, I'd say certainly 30. Bit under, bit over. I haven't been counting. But let me recount one. This gentleman from New Zealand, and he said he knew, because he had this far memory of being burnt, and he always presumed that he was burnt at Montsegur. But what he did was he had a past life regression, and they told him now he was a young lady and he was burnt at Minerve. I said 134 were burnt there. No, it was 140, but there's also 30 children. So what he did was he hopped on a plane, went over to the south of France, went to Minerve, and he walked down to where the area was that he was burnt. It's the confluence where two rivers come together, of two rivers which are dry, normally dry, except when in flood. And he walked down, and as he emailed me, he's telling me the story, and he said, as he was walking down, suddenly all the structures in this life disappeared, and he was in this medieval town, and he was a young girl, and he was walking with all the others, 140 of them, but it was he that said there were also 30 children, and then they were taken to where they already had a pyre, all of wood piled up, and he was burnt there. So this is not, I won't say it's a typical story, because everyone has their own particular story. So there is this mass, what would you call it, revival, reincarnation, that's happening all over the world and in certain areas. We know about Dr. Arthur Gurdam, and he was in the south of France, the south of England, and there was half a dozen people there, including himself, that had this group reincarnation at that particular time. And they were people who knew each other 700 years ago, or it wasn't 700 years ago then, but 600 and whatever years ago. So this is happening. There's book after book on Catharism. I put out my share, but there's others coming from other directions, all giving this foundation, solid foundation, about the philosophy of unconditional love for everybody and everything everywhere of Catharism, and how it's transferred from a Christian religion, because they were all Catholics at the time, so they when they became Cathars, they only knew religion. But now it's a way of life, a philosophy of life, in which anybody and all can be a part of. It's simply a way of living, but making love, the actions of love, paramount in one's life. "700 years since Guillaume." I won't recount his story because I've already put out a video previously on Guillaume Belibaste. He was a bit of a wild man, and it was also a period of when Catharism was on its last legs. At that time, he was the last perfecter. He wasn't the last perfecter to be burnt. There was some up to 100 years later, and that was the last two I'm aware of were burnt at Florence, Firenze. The last Cathars to be burnt in mass was a little island off the coast of Italy. It's called Sirmione, Sermione, and they were actually in an old Roman Colosseum, and there was a group of them. I'm not too sure how many were burnt, but I think there was a couple of hundred burnt there. So that was the last mass burnings of Cathars, and that's something like 100 years later, after Guillaume was burnt. And that was virtually the end of it. There was fragments of Catharism here and there, even as far as Egypt, but the armies of the day, the religions of the day, slowly but surely wiped them out. But now there's this return, and some people have said, "Oh, where's the Cathar organisation? Where's their headquarters?" Well, I think Cathars aren't going to make the same mistake. If you have a building or a headquarters and there's a leader, leaders can be assassinated, headquarters can be burnt down, organisations can be destroyed. But if it's a philosophy, and it's a philosophy of love, and people take on board whatever aspects of that Cathar philosophy, you can't destroy this. You don't even know who's taken it on board. It's there. It's for everybody, and it's worldwide, and it's a way of life. It's a philosophy, and it's very hard to wipe out a philosophy. although the Catholic Church did a pretty good job with the original Cathars, I have to say that. We could put that down to one of the first, well, certainly wasn't one of the first, but it was certainly one of the first, mass premeditated genocides, because they set out to wipe out every last Cathar and everything, not just the Cathars, but everything to do with them. Their books, their writings, anything that they had at all, but they weren't into churches, so they couldn't destroy that. So it was total destruction. But after 700 years, Guillaume's prophecy has arrived, and from now on, the Cathar philosophy will expand. You can't keep a good thing down. That's been proven over and over again. But look at the world, the state of the world. Just a very quick snapshot, seeing it is an anniversary, August 2021. Over the news came today that Greenland, for the first time in known history, had rain instead of snow in August. Such is climate. The Arctic Circle, which was blocked by ice, now in summer ships can pass through there quite easily, and they've even got tourist ships going through there. California's afire, Oregon. Other areas in Europe are awash with floods. The war in Afghanistan has come to a close, and now it's the terrible aftermath of getting out those who could. The oceans of the world has warmed by something 1.5 degrees. About a year ago, close to a year ago, they drilled in the Antarctic. They drilled down to the base, which is about half a mile down. And what they noticed was it was 2 degrees above zero on the surface with those who were drilling down. But when they hit the water and the landmass down below, they found that the temperature was 3 degrees above zero. 3 degrees above zero, whereas those on the surface were 2 degrees below zero. So there was a difference of 5 degrees. But there's this warmth of the water is the runoff of water. There's rivers, they found out through lasers and mapping it from planes, that there's rivers greater than the Amazon flowing underneath the Antarctica. We can't stop that anytime soon, even if we could somehow tomorrow switch off climate change. As well, in the Thwaites Glacier, and I think it's a Pine something glacier, which is very close, there are actually active volcanoes that are warming that particular area. Now, that's also something we can't turn off. In the Arctic regions, there was the areas that are the permafrost, and that's warming up, and that's releasing carbon. But they've also noticed that there's a huge stretch up there where there's exposed limestone, and as that limestone thaws out, that's also releasing carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. These are things that, even if we stop climate change, and which we're not going to, we haven't so far, it's not going to alter these particular aspects. We are at 8 billion population in the world. The UN says 2 billion is a ideally sustainable population for planet Earth. We're 6 billion too many. COVID, which is raging the world, is doing its best to cut down the population to some degree. But there's only so many that even the virus can cut down. So the world, through overproduction and through overpopulation, which is causing overproduction, is forever sliding down into a form of chaos which we don't know because we haven't experienced it before. The Great Boulder Dam in America, that's down by 2/3. The Great Artesian Basin that ran right through the centre of the United States of America, when they wrote of mice and men, that time there was windmills around, but today windmills don't work because the surface water has gone down, some in places totally and other places down 120 feet. It has to be pumped up. Water is running out everywhere. India has got a big problem. The glaciers of the world, out of the 36 major glaciers, something like 2/5 of them have already disappeared. So that's not a very bright picture of the world. And things are changing. In Sydney, every year there was people were coming to the cities, to Sydney, and in Australia today, there's more people leaving Sydney and going to the country for a better lifestyle, to country towns, smaller towns, than there is arriving in Sydney. Our whole world, within the last few years, have been changed upside down. There are many, many wonderful things happening to counterbalance that, but they're not really going to counterbalance the aspects of climate change. I'm saying these things for us to take into account that life is not just, it may or may not go on as we know it, but I don't think it's going to go back to what it was even 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The world has changed with COVID, climate change, the various things that are happening. We have an uncertain future. Cities are no longer the wonderful places that they used to be. Cities these days, if there's pandemics and a situation like that, or if you're hit by one of these little things that the sun spits out, the cities are not going to be a good place to be. So we don't know what the future is. But from a spiritual side, statistically, I was reading that every country in the world, from the most religious to the most irreligious, but in every case, religion is waning. But what is happening is that people's spirituality, their sense of the divine, is changing. And this is happening right throughout the world. There are so many amazing things that people are doing, helping other people. When I was a kid, and well, we can say certainly 100 years ago, if you weren't certainly in America, in England, Australia, if you weren't white and Protestant, you weren't particularly welcome. They'd give you a hard time. But now people care. People care about other people in the world. What's going on? We care what's happening in Afghanistan. It doesn't matter that people may have a different belief system or different religion. People do care about other people. More people do care about the environment. More people do care for the rights of animals. More people do speak up for those who don't have the ability to speak up for themselves. The world has become less religious but more spiritual. The world has become more reliant on action, doing things, rather than on prayer. That's not to deny that people need to pray, each to their own. But there has been a cosmic shift in the consciousness of the world. We know now, because of the pandemics that can hit us, are becoming more and more difficult to live out what we would have termed normal lives. There's a greater emphasis on self-sustainability. More people are going out to the country to raise their families. But what's the future for Catharism? Obviously, medieval Catharism was a belief system for its times, and they were harsh times. Today is a Catharism for a different age. Everything evolves. There's no religion or philosophy that hasn't evolved over the years, even though those who are in charge of that particular religion are trying to keep everything stuck in cement, but it doesn't work that way. People evolved, and with it, belief systems evolved as we gain new knowledge. Right throughout the world, even now, there are Cathars and people leaning towards the ideals and philosophy of Catharism, and they're scattered worldwide. I feel that in the future there will be various groups coming together loosely. Some might be tighter than others, but these groups will communicate, support and sustain each other. The world has become more and more aware of the Cathars of old and their message of unconditional love for everybody and everything, everywhere. Guillaume Belibaste's prophecy wasn't in vain. In the 700 years, things have changed, and now it's reached an age where the beliefs that he held dear can be promulgated out, disseminated out worldwide. So those who relate to that message can take it on board, each to their own. I did write a poem about Guillaume Belibaste, and I'll end this talk on, once again, reciting his poem, seeing it is the 700th anniversary of his departure, being burnt to death courtesy of the Church. Guillaume Belibaste, Cathar perfecti. Guillaume Belibaste, he once confided in me, in 700 years, we Cathars, we will rewrite history. In 700 years, the laurel will again grow green. Catharism once again will grace the world scene. It was in Villerouge, Terminay, that Guillaume told me that only unconditional love will truly set you free. In his life he experienced love of both body and soul, for we need to love and be loved to keep the soul whole. It was a bright fine day in August in the year of 1321. Guillaume Belibaste was burnt under an early sun. He was the last perfecti to die in that land of Oc, when the Inquisitors lit the flames at 8 o'clock. Guillaume, an imperfect perfecti, who knew how to die, for he recanted not from torture, flames, he did not cry. He kept the faith as well. He did not prophesy in vain, for he foretold the children of light will return again. Bye for now.